But I realized that the exam was not testing my knowledge only. It was also testing my ability to structure my answers and actually understand how the exam works. I stopped memorizing my notes and instead I started to put them into stories. I had to get so close to the image of the exam that when the exam finally came, it wasn't that scary. If you're like me and you suffer from exam anxiety, I just want you to ask yourself one simple question. Who has actually confirmed to you that you were going to fail the exam? Like, I know your past papers might be showing you something, maybe your teachers have predicted you a certain grade, but like, has anyone actually come from the future with your physical exam paper and shown you that you got an F? I mean, unless teleportation is a thing that I don't know about, I don't think that has happened. So why is it that you're feeding yourself this energy and these lies that it's going to happen? I sat my A-levels about 5 years ago. I know I'm a bit old, but during the time I suffered from a lot of doubts, a lot of anxiety, like constantly second guessing my knowledge. And when I changed my mindset and my exam strategy, that's when I was able to hit the goal of getting the A's and the A stars. Through this, I realized that the goal was not to get the highest grades, but it was to sit the best exam. And so in order to hit the goal of sitting the best exam, I had to transform my anxiety into confidence. And to do that, I had to gain clarity, I had to improve my exam technique, and I also had to change my mindset. So let's go through each of these things that allowed me to transform my journey of the exam process. The reason you might be overwhelmed right now is not because you don't have enough time, but because you're not using your time efficiently. You are currently overwhelmed because you're trying to memorize a stack of notes. You have no schedule in place. You wake up and you just see a big pile of notes and you're just like, oh my gosh, like there's so much to go through. So the first thing we need to do is to gain clarity by making a schedule, and the easiest way to do that is on Google Calendar. So let's do this together. So I have my little laptop over here, okay? So we're gonna jump onto Google Calendar, and then I want you to mark your exam dates and then create your weekly schedule that you will stick to the build-up of the exam. So you want to know when you're going to be going through your past papers, when you're marking them, and also when you're going to go over topics you struggle with. Also, you want to know when you're even going to ask your teacher for help. You want to have this timetable be so specific that you wake up every day and you have a clear schedule of the day towards the build-up of the exam. The more clarity you have, the more confidence you're going to build, and with more confidence, it's going to increase your performance of sitting and writing the best exam. Okay, next, method. I had to change my method of studying and my approach to the exam. Like, I was so overwhelmed because I had all of these notes. I was like, how am I going to memorize all of these things? I didn't trust my ability to memorize things on the spot. And this was scaring me, like it was scaring the crap out of me. But I realized that the exam was not testing my knowledge only. It was also testing my ability to structure my answers and actually understand how the exam works. A successful exam strategy actually consists of two things: your ability to recall knowledge and also your technique to answer the question. Let's break down this formula. To gain exam technique, I had to understand how the exam works. And the only way to understand how the exam is going to work is to do past papers. That's the holy grail to everything, okay? And the more past papers I did, the more I started to understand the format of the exam. The more I realized the kind of questions that keep getting asked. And I also realized when certain topics are being asked, there are certain keywords that I have to use in order to get the mark. Okay, so I did so many exam papers that I knew that if I was to flip the future exam I was going to sit, the first few questions were going to be multiple choice, and then the next questions were going to probably be 2-mark questions, and then further on I'll get those really heavy mark questions. But because I practiced so many times, I just kind of knew what to expect for the format of the exam, and that built my confidence to do what? To hit the goal of sitting and writing the best exam. Furthermore, my past papers allowed me to see the subjects I was still struggling with, which allowed me to efficiently study for them and also go and ask my teachers any questions that I had. And that started to also reduce my anxiety because I was quickly finding the points of fissures in my knowledge and I was just filling it up. It was just so efficient. So when you've done the past papers and now you understand the gaps in your knowledge, you need to get a better understanding of the concepts, and you need to trust the ability to recall this information in the exam. And the only way I was able to gain that confidence in my ability to recall the information later was by making all of the concepts that I studied into stories. I stopped memorizing big chunks of information. Like, I stopped memorizing my notes, and instead I started to put them into stories. For example, I really struggled with the idea of redshift. In the textbook, it was like redshift is the expansion of the wavelength going towards the red end of the spectrum. And okay, that was all good and all, but I didn't necessarily know if 2 months down the line I would still have that knowledge in my head. So instead of just memorizing redshift based on what is said in the book, I put redshift into a real life example and I made a story about it. So I said, when a car is coming towards me, the wavelength is decreasing, and when it's moving away from me, the wavelength is expanding, and that's what redshift is. So I made up the situation in my mind and I applied it to the concepts I just read. When I made up the story, I would pretend to teach someone in front of me. Like, I would just be speaking to myself in my bedroom. Like, the reason why scientists think that the world is expanding is because of this theory called redshift. Do you want to know what redshift is? Well, I'm going to tell you. Redshift is the expansion of wavelength that happens when something moves away from an observer, also known as the Doppler effect. You know what, guys, I'm really rusty right now because it's been 5 years, but you see, because I made a story in my mind, I still remember how this worked because I made it into a context. And this is so important because when you go into the exam, they're not gonna ask you in every question to just define a concept. Sometimes they're going to be asking you to define a concept, but it's going to be hidden within a context of something else. So, for example, they might say a man is on a bus and when the bus stops, he falls. Explain why this happens. And the real question is to explain or define Newton's laws. So the question really is that, but they've hid it in this context of a man falling on his face. And you are going to have to be able to derive that and see how you would answer that question. The next part of my method is active recall. As I already said before, I used to be in my room and I'd just be yapping away to non-existent people, like pretending to be a professor, telling them my stories about certain things, like, let me tell you a story about redshift. Let me tell you a story about blah, 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 blah. If you can't explain a topic to somebody, you don't understand it. And because nobody was there to help me explain the topic, I had to make up random people, imaginary friends, I guess, whatever. Or like, if you don't want to feel like you're talking to no one, put a teddy bear on your bed and just talk to the teddy bear. It's gonna help, okay? But that was such a great way for me to know and trust myself in my ability to regurgitate and reproduce knowledge. The next thing I did for active recall was to have a pop quiz with my friend or my classmate. And this was just me and my classmate sitting together, and they would just ask me certain questions and then I would respond, and then vice versa. And the key to this is that you don't need to have all of the answers in your head, but at least have an idea of how you would structure an answer if you were asked it. So if your friend asked you, for example, can you tell me how you would solve a question about circuits? You might not know the answer, but you do know certain things that would be used in that question. Maybe you're gonna have to write down a few formulas. So you'll be like, okay, to come to that answer, I would actually structure my answer by doing this. I would use these keywords, I would use this concept, I would use this formula, and in doing so, I would be able to answer that question. And when you're able to do this, guys, it's going to build your confidence so much and allow you to write the best possible exam, because it doesn't matter what question comes up in the exam, you already have methods and fundamentals that are going to help you to execute. The 3 things I did to change my mindset was to have a stress outlet, to learn the power of visualization, and also to rethink the exam. So let's dive into each of these things. First one is to de-stress and find a stress outlet. Find something that allows you to come back and anchor yourself, to allow you to bring your mind back to your body. For some people it could be meditation, for other people it could be prayer, for some people it could be sports. But for me at the time, what I used to do was I used to listen to podcasts all the time. So I used to remove myself from my current situation through podcasts. I would listen to a podcast by Eric Thomas, every morning going to school. And a few ones I would recommend is Jay Shetty's On Purpose podcast. I would also recommend Eric Thomas's podcast. He's great. I'm gonna just leave a few podcasts down below so that you could use it for your mind. But I would literally be walking to school and I would be listening to these things, listening to these positive thoughts, changing the way I thought about myself, the way I thought about my ability, and it just built my confidence internally. The next thing I had to do was visualization. I had to get so close to the image of the exam that when the exam finally came, it wasn't that scary, because most of our fear actually comes from the unknown. So every time I had a moment in the day, I would close my eyes and think about how the exam was going to go. So I would close my eyes and just practice, like, okay, Gabby, you're gonna walk into the exam hall, you're gonna be a bit nervous, you're gonna hear the clock ticking, but you're gonna sit down on your seat, you're gonna flip the paper. The first page is gonna be multiple choice. A bit overwhelming, but it's okay. You're gonna go through it, you're gonna go through you're gonna go through each question, one question at a time. You're gonna flip the next page. Okay, multiple choice is done. Now the next questions are gonna be 2 markers. You're gonna do them to your best ability. You're gonna flip the page. And I would just visualize these images over and over and over again. And I won't lie, situations will happen where you just have no idea what to answer in the exam. Like, you are just so confused. But if you have been able to visualize these things happening and you've been able to visualize your response to it, like, okay, I might not understand the question, but let me breathe in, let me breathe out, and let me put down the method in which I would use to approach this question, half the fear will go. Finally, I had to rethink the exam. Like, I used to go into exams thinking that the exams are there to scorn me, to intimidate me, but that's not the purpose of the exam. Instead, start to think that the exam is actually a platform for you to go and show off. Like, the exam is the opportunity now to go in and show everything that you've learned, all of the hard work that you've done over the last few years, and this is the moment for you to shine. Don't treat it as a disadvantage, but an opportunity for you to show off everything that you've struggled for, everything that you've worked for over the past few years. And at the end of the day, if you're able to do that, if you're able to go to the exam and just show off everything that you've done, you are gonna be good. You're gonna be able to close the exam paper and say, this is everything, this is my heart, this is my soul, I put everything in this paper, I'm closing it now, take it away from me, that's it. You're able to walk away from the exam and be like, I did that, I did my best, and that's all anyone can ever ask from you. It doesn't matter what grade you get, it doesn't matter. You did your best, and that's it, that's the most important thing. Okay, so that's the end of this video. I really have a lot of sympathy for anybody who suffers from exam anxiety, because I am someone who does stress a lot about exams and just performing in general. But I feel like every time I do get into those stages or phases, I have certain anchors that bring me back, and those anchors are what I just explained in this video. So good luck. I did my exams for A-levels about 5 years ago, and it was very scary, it was very daunting, but now I look back at it and I realize it was just a moment in my life, and in that moment I did the best that I could, and that's all anyone could ask from me. You know, it's not about the grade that I got. Yes, I got the A's and the A stars, but that's not the point. The point was not the grade, the point was the process. I'm wishing you the best. Good luck, you got this. Remember, the exam is just a second in your life. It's gonna come, it's gonna go. Enjoy the moment. It's an enjoyable moment for you to go and express how much you've learned and studied. So that's it, that's all you could do, and I'm wishing you the best. Good luck, and that's it. Peace, stay safe, stay blessed. I'll see you next time.